With all the crazy injuries we've seen over the years in the NBA, one name still reigns supreme when it comes to the most horrific injury ever, that being Paul George. In this episode of The Most Horrific Injury, we are going to look at how he was able to rebuild himself after arguably one of the worst injuries in sports history. We all know what happened to Paul George, right? But for those who don't, let's catch up. During a Team USA practice in 2014, PG-13 went up for a simple layup and landed awkwardly on his right leg. But not before testing his injured leg in a pickup game against none other than LeBron James and the Cavs. He was named an All-Star and an All-NBA player once again. He got his wish as the Pacers traded him to the Thunder in the summer of 2017. He played alongside Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony for 2 seasons. This is where things would really take off for him. So far, his best year with the Clippers was in 2021-22. He averaged 26.2 points per game, 6.1 rebounds per game, and 5.2 assists per game. He shot a career-high 41.8% from three-point range. It was clear that he was back to his pre-injury form and actually playing better than ever. Alongside Kawhi Leonard, Paul George would make it to the Western Conference Finals in 2020. Make sure you subscribe and comment. Also, check out my podcast. Thanks for watching. The Clippers came back from a 3-1 series deficit against the Nuggets in the second round, and then took a 3-1 lead against the Suns in the Western Conference Finals. They looked poised to go to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2007. Unfortunately, the Clippers blew a 3-1 lead and lost in 6 games. Paul George had a relatively down year in the bubble compared to his standards. He shot poorly from the field and from 3. He also had trouble containing opposing players on defense. But OKC wasn't a very good team, and they failed to make the playoffs both seasons. Paul George's numbers remained consistent, though. He was named an All-Star both seasons and made the All-NBA team once again. Unfortunately, in Game 1 of the Clippers' first-round series against the Suns, Paul George fractured his right hand after punching the screen in frustration. This forced him to miss the remainder of the series. The Suns easily dispatched the Clippers in 6 games. Had Paul been healthy, the series could have gone differently. Who knows? Maybe they could have even made it to the Western Conference Finals. He showed no ill effects from the injury and proved that he was indeed back to form. Looking at his career trajectory before the injury and comparing it to his career after the injury, you wouldn't believe the turnaround if you didn't know about it. Paul George was on pace to be a perennial All-Star and possibly even a top 5 player in the world had he never suffered the horrific injury. It's safe to say that he has accomplished more after the injury than he would have had he never suffered it. That in itself is a testament to his character. He could have easily laid down and died on that training room table. But instead, he channeled his anger and frustration into motivation to come back and defy the odds. That is why Paul George will always be a legend in the hearts of many. He is the true definition of the phrase, "The obstacle is the path." His injury may have been the worst in sports history, but he turned his horrific injury into his greatest motivator, which in turn gave him the fuel to reclaim his legacy. He proved that he was indeed back and better than ever. He averaged 23.7 points per game, 7.6 rebounds per game, and 4.4 assists per game. He also shot a career-high 42.1% from beyond the arc. Unfortunately, his team wasn't very good, and they were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. In the lone playoff game, Paul George didn't play due to a knee injury. He ended up scoring 22 points on 8 for 16 shooting, draining 4 3-pointers in the process. His first game back with the Pacers, he scored 14 points and dished out 7 assists in 23 minutes off the bench. Even though he was rusty, it was still great to see him back on the court. Sadly, he suffered a setback and had to miss a few games. But this didn't deter him from playing through the pain. The rest of the season wasn't nearly as good as the year prior, but PG-13 was still putting up solid numbers. He averaged 17.9 points per game, 5.7 rebounds per game, and 3.5 assists per game. His three-point percentage dropped to 31.9, and his shooting percentage also dropped to 42.2. These numbers aren't terrible by any means, but for Paul George, they were pretty subpar. He immediately crumpled to the floor in pain. You could see and hear the bones snap from across the room. This is something nobody should ever have to see or hear live, let alone on national TV. It was such a freak accident that everyone in the gym stopped and stared in disbelief. And it was so bad that Team USA's coach sent everyone out of the gym, while medical staff rushed to attend to Paul. To say this was bad would be a horrific understatement. It literally looked like his shin snapped in half. It was one of those injuries that you really didn't want to see happen to anybody, especially somebody like Paul George, who was known for his lockdown defense and high-flying offense. He was considered one of the league's rising stars. He made his first All-Star team that same year. He was only 24 years old and had just signed a big contract extension with the Pacers. It was looking like he could possibly become a perennial All-Star and even contend for MVP and championships in the coming years. That is, until he shattered his tibia. It's me, and this is the most horrific injury. This injury forced him to miss the entire 2014-15 season and raised questions whether he would ever play basketball again, let alone ever be the same player he once was before the injury. After surgery, the road to recovery began. For any broken bone, the first 3 months are the hardest, because you have to let the bone knit together. All you can do is lay there and be miserable. Once the bone starts knitting, then you can start the long process of rehabbing. The rehab process for a lower leg injury is extremely painful and long. Not only are you trying to get your range of motion back, but you also have to build up your quad strength again. This is extremely difficult for anybody. Now imagine doing all of this under the bright lights of the media spotlight. The pressure is exponentially higher. People are questioning whether or not you'll ever play again, let alone play at a high level. You also have teammates and coaches counting on you to come back and lead the team. There is so much pressure involved in recovering from this type of injury. But somehow, Paul George did it. Through sheer willpower and determination, he was able to make a remarkable comeback. Playing again the following season, the next season, however, he would finally break out. After this, he started to show discontent with the Pacers organization and requested a trade. In 2019, he would sign with the Clippers and reunite with his former coach from the Pacers, Doc Rivers. He would bounce back in the 2020-21 season, averaging 23.3 points per game and making the All-Star team for the 5th time in his career. Now, if you think this story is over, you'd be wrong. Now, what does all of this mean? What legacy has Paul George left on the NBA? I hope you enjoyed today's video.